Hey everybody, Sheriff Swanson here. I'm here with my dear friend Chris Hansen. And we're coming to you because we have just worked together and we have closed out a 4-month investigation that targeted different locations throughout Genesee County, specifically looking for people that came to have sex with a 15, 14, and 13-year-old. We were in Mount Morris, Goodrich, we did Grand Blanc, we did Davison, we did another Goodrich location, and in the last 4 months, we arrested 13 people just in those locations coming to have sex with a child. And I want you to hear this message because we already featured one. In fact, you probably remember him, David Dews. This was from our Davison operation, and this was the individual who was a member of a local church that was on the security team. He also was an HVAC instructor at a local community college. We did that because we want to put these individuals out front so perhaps other victims can see the picture, come forward, feel like they have a voice. They know that maybe somebody like this who has never been caught has been held accountable. But we did arrest somebody last night that we really want you to pay attention to because he was a police officer. I will tell you that, you know, this guy right here from one of our operations is 29 years old, lives in Burton. This is a 49-year-old from Mora, a 29-year-old from Grand Blanc, an 18-year-old from Flint, 49-year-old from Saginaw, 32-year-old from Shelby Township, another 29-year-old. All of those will be brought to you within the next 7 days. But the one we want to highlight is this guy, Todd Barrco. As of this morning, before I called the chief and made him aware, the Vassar Police Department was his employer. He was a part-time police officer. We're going to go over his work history, but he was more than a police officer, and Chris can tell you because he talked to him, in his attitude and his demeanor, you knew something was unique about this guy.
Well, Sheriff, it's very interesting, and as you know, throughout the G.H.O.S.T investigations where we've collaborated and through, you know, hundreds of other Predator interviews I've done over the years, you get a sense of who you're dealing with beforehand. Now, we didn't know this Todd Barrco guy was a law enforcement officer, but when he came in, his sense of entitlement, his sense of authority, his indignation that I would ask him any questions about his activity, and he was there for a child, and it was unmistakable from the chats and the phone calls and everything that went into it. He just wanted to take over the whole scene and tell me I couldn't put him on camera, which obviously isn't true, and he would turn away from the camera and he'd just turn into another hidden camera. But when he left, I said to your crew, I said, I'll bet you money this guy is a teacher, a principal, a cop, or a clergyman, or somebody in authority, because that was his sense of indignation that we would possibly question this. And lo and behold, within minutes, your guys went out to his vehicle, 3 guns and handcuffs. He was a cop.
Your gut was right. And not only that, but he was in education. And, you know, when you watch this interview take place, you could see his entitlement when he was the one that came there to have sex with a 15-year-old.
He was going to tell me how this was going to go down, and then he was going to do the same thing to your team.
Right. That doesn't happen.
Wasn't going to happen.
So we did some more investigation, and we find that, you know, here's his booking photo. That was last night. And this is his online photo. So since 2014, he's been employed at these locations. And the reason we bring this is what was on his online profile. Right. So we haven't validated these. We're actively investigating, but we, because of our experience, have known that maybe there's some victims out there in these areas that when you have worked under his authority, because you saw and you heard from Chris his demeanor, that those that are predators, you know, mind you, he's 44 years old, coming for a 15-year-old, it's not uncommon that they may have harmed someone else. So in 2014, he left the Imlay City Schools as the Dean of Students. In 2015, he left as the Assistant Principal of Westwood Heights School. 2017, he left as the Principal of Merrill Community Schools. 2019, Assistant Principal of Akron Fairgrove Schools. 2020, Assistant Principal of Vassar Public Schools. He was a juvenile probation officer at Lapeer County Family Court. 2008, he lists his first law enforcement job, which was Marine City Police Department. He left there in 08 and went to the Oxford Police Department, left there in 2015, went to the Mayville Police Department, 2017, City of Memphis Police Department, 2020, and as I said, as of this morning, he was with Vassar Police Department. And talking to the chief, he reacted the way any leader would, and he was so grateful that we gave him notification, and he was fired. He's in the Genesee County Jail right now. Judge Manley authorized the warrant that was written by Prosecutor Layton for 3 counts. Count number 1, which is a 20-year felony, child sexual abuse of material. Count number 2, which is also a 20-year felony, and that is communicating with another to commit a crime. Count number 3 is a 4-year felony, accosting for immoral purposes. Now, when you are in this battle, there are a lot of Chris Hansons and Sheriff Swansons out there. But when you team up with people that have such a platform, our mission is the same. And I'd like to ask you, Chris, I mean, you've been all over the world doing these. You've been doing it for over 18 years. You just had your 18th year anniversary of doing these.
On the Predator series.
Yeah. Are we making a difference?
We are making a difference, but the landscape, Sheriff, as you know, and you do these cases every day, has changed because when we started, imagine this, 18 years ago, we merely had decoys and chat rooms on AOL and Yahoo. Well, today, Skip, Badu, Skip the Games rather, Badu, Kick, all the social media platforms that exist today, there are more opportunities than ever before. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and we see these cases, and so the number of crimes has exponentially grown. The number of potential victims.
Yes.
So, from the first time I did this 18 years ago, when I thought we'd do it 2 or 3 times and nobody would show up, until last night, where we caught a police officer, a former educator.
Yes.
It hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse. Now, the good news is because of the awareness that you create through these ghost operations, and you're now teaching other law enforcement agencies around the country how to do this with some strategic knowledge and structure to it, which is important. You're going to make a dent.
That's right.
You will. And ultimately, enough people will go to prison, and I think you'll turn the tide. But it's a long struggle, and as long as kids are on the internet, and predators know that, they have the potential to become a criminal. And that's just a certain segment of the population will do this no matter what. A certain only does it because of the internet, and a certain are guys who get mixed up and they do bad things but can be fixed.
Yeah.
But that bad element, the pure stone-cold predator will always be there.
I think it's important to note that, as long as I've been doing it as well, that face may change, but that's why you need to be vigilant in doing these proactive investigations, because the enemy will be there.
Well, and again, these are not just the guy who's creepy, who's on the sex offender registry already,
That's right.
back in prison forever. They don't have the word predator tattooed across their forehead. This was a cop. This was an executive with an automotive company. You also saw a business owner, guys from all walks of life,
Yes.
and this is just in one night,
I know.
in one county in America.
And if you notice, there's some of the towns that I mentioned, they're not from Genesee County. And so when you do these events, we purposely put them in locations where people never thought that human trafficking would be right there. By definition, when you have an underage person, whether it's consensual or not, that is offering themselves for consensual commercial sex, it doesn't matter, that's human trafficking. When you have somebody who's an adult coming to take advantage of a child, that's human trafficking. So we do this to prove a point, that the predators will travel. One of the first arrests we got was from Chesney, that drove all the way to Goodrich, Michigan.
Yeah.
That's like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, we've seen them come 4 and 5 hours across the state of Florida, across California. I was just doing a segment for the podcast, Predators I Caught Today, that goes out Sunday night. And these were 2 guys who drove from North Hollywood to Riverside to meet a 12-year-old girl.
So the reason that we're teamed up, and I team up with other police departments across the country, other sheriffs across the state of Michigan, is because we have to be on the forefront. We have to make sure that the pressure never, ever ends on predators. You know, if somebody's struggling with this pedophilia, if they're struggling with this, then go get the counseling and help you need before you strike on a child. If you're struggling and you have something that you need to disclose, go find a trusted source. But when you come to act it out, you're going to be arrested. You're going to be held accountable. Chris Hansen may be there. But the reason we team up is because it doesn't hurt our investigation, it helps it. Because we're able to put our cases together. And Chris wasn't with us at every operation, but he's got a platform that reaches people that I can't reach. And if that message carries to somebody out there, there's a victim that they see on a story that you did with us, and they come forward and somebody else gives them their voice, then that's a win.
Well, you know, in so many areas where you've been proactive, drug use, rehabilitation of inmates in the county jail, all those important things, it's about demand reduction in some ways. It's very difficult to achieve demand reduction with this one. And so what do? The best defense is education, a dialogue, whatever deterrence you can provide.
That's right.
Which is what happens in these sting operations. And creating that awareness that perhaps didn't exist before. You know, people ask Sheriff all the time, what if nobody shows up? Okay, we win. There are 100 stories that I can work on this weekend.
Yes.
Right? This is one of them.
That's right.
So if that happens, great. I doubt it's going to happen.
Right.
But if it does, I've got a lot of other things I can work on.
And we get critiqued sometimes by why would we put it out there on social media, on our national media? Why do you put it out there? Because we've never had an operation where nobody never showed.
Right.
We chat 100 to 200 people. And so I have a message that I want to give, and I'm going to ask you to close us out. My message is to victims, and I would ask you, Chris, that you speak to the parents out there, the grandparents, and let them know what you need from all your experience, what you need them to do. So to the victims, we show these pictures because we know that sometimes you just need to be set free, and you have a voice. And whether it's your local law enforcement, whether it's 911, whether it's G.H.O.S.T right now, we're 24/7. We have detectives on call right now. They're anticipating this call. They know I'm going live. 810-257-3422 or 911. If you're in Genesee County, I need to talk to a G.H.O.S.T member. We'll talk with you. We have people that if you're not comfortable with one, we'll put somebody else in there. You deserve a voice. You deserve justice. We've had countless cases where people have been profiled and victims have come forward because they were assaulted years ago and they never came forth. And so my message to you is I'm with you. I'm going to back you, I'm going to protect you, and we're going to hold people like that guy accountable. Chris, close this out. What message to the parents?
Look, parents, godparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, or younger kids, you need to have the discussion with the kids. You can't assume that they're safe just because Snapchat exists, because Instagram exists, because Facebook exists, and besides the hardcore predator we expose. You need to also know that I've got at least a half a dozen stories, investigative documentaries working right now on men taking advantage of women online, whether it's financially, physically, or sexually. You need to understand that unless you know that human being in real life, you don't know that human being because we're speaking on it. Have the discussion. It's important. Age-appropriate discussion, but have it. You can't go wrong. Thanks very much for joining us on this afternoon. Thank you, Sheriff Swanson, for collaborating on this very important investigation, and we'll have more to come here in Genesee County.